I mentioned in some of our early discussions, the Drake equation, which is an astronomical formula that, indicates the likelihood of finding intelligent life in the universe. We have the SETI system that's part of NASA scanning the skies for radio transmissions from little green men. Part of the Drake equation indicates that there's a likelihood, and that's a factor in the equation, of intelligent species destroying themselves by nuclear or some other type of pervasive doomsday weapon. In this scenario, you could see the global communication network collapse at some point, and we would economically nuke ourselves back to the Stone Age or something close to it.
Well, that's again, that's possible, especially because of the globalization that you mentioned at the beginning of this discussion. The world is truly globalized, much more than ever before, and within a few years, it's going to be even more interconnected. So you're right. What happens in one particular place has effects elsewhere. The collapse of one corporation, the collapse of one country, the collapse of a region, the collapse of a continent, all has implications everywhere in the world. And of course, capitalism, the way we see it today, could be dramatically affected by this. In particular, I believe in capitalism, that the kind of capitalism that promotes competition and fairness in an atmosphere of freedom. It's been a force that's been successful in feeding billions of people and allowed the individual to use his or her talents to fulfill themselves and to gain a profit and make a contribution for society. We've seen so many stories of success and altruism at the same time. On the other hand, coercion, the use of fear, totalitarianism, control of the means of production and control of people's skills, control of their destinies, doesn't work. And it's wrong from a social justice and humanitarian point of view. We've seen that before.
I read a disturbing quote the other day by, I believe his name is Leonid, if I get the first name correctly, but Brzezinski, who was he not the Secretary of State at one point? He said something recently I was just floored by. He indicated that totalitarianism is spreading around, in this kind of, fascist, flavor to a lot of governments, ours included here in the U.S. But he said, there are some analysis. There's some analysis out there that it used to be far easier to control 1 million people than it is now, and that there are some people doing the calculus at the top that are theorizing that it's now because of our fiercely independent streak. This discussion you and I are having is an open discussion of the failures of leadership, that there are some in power out there, and perhaps, I'm not going to mention any governments in particular, but, have done the calculus that if I can't control 1 million, it is now technologically easier to kill 1 million. And this unfortunate aspect of human nature, when it's given too much power, plays out. But let me turn this whole phrase around. Give me your best case scenario for a hypothetical turnaround at the top. You avoided shooting across their bow, because it's real easy to blame everybody and target every leader in the world. And I believe you put this together as a cautionary tale for consumption at the highest levels. Give me your solution scenario for how, say, your warning can impact what they do.
Well, we really need to begin, as I said, at the bottom with a change of values and also a sense of optimism that we can get through all of this. And we have to do it at the community level. We have to do it at the local level. We have to be convinced as individuals that we can do this. And as we reflect our own sense of independence and our own sense of optimism, we'll select and find leaders that believe in the same thing. In the last chapter, I discussed the case for optimism because I'm an optimist, and I believe that there are solutions being proposed. And there are many people who are much smarter than I am who proposed how we should think and the right kind of attitude and how we should look for leaders who have a moral compass, have a sense of spirituality about them, no matter what that sense of spirituality is, and truly have a sense of ethics before we put them into positions of leadership. And we take for granted the fact that they're competent. What I see for the future, and this is what I'm hoping for, is that our standards for leaders, the kinds of leaders that we accept, will be higher than they are now, because the standards that we have today are not high enough. They're not strong enough. So I believe that our standards need to go up. That's what I described in my book on leadership, what the standards for outstanding and extraordinary leadership are. How do we create courageous and compassionate leaders? We can do it, but we have to do it at the ground level, from the bottom up. You're doing it right now with the work that you're trying to do, creating awareness about thoughts, about ideas, about books, about people who are starting a dialogue about all of this. Now, in 2014, we have to begin a dialogue about what's up ahead to prevent it from actually happening, and to see who those people are that come forward and say, I understand this, I see this, I'd like to take responsibility to make sure that this doesn't happen. So
that is, I think, a tremendous statement. So many times it is so easy. Yeah, that's why I ask for solutions, because it is so easy to make these discussions all about blame and venting of anger and frustration and pointing out everyone's mistakes. You brought it right back to my doorstep. So I have responsibility in this too. And as you said, that's part of the reason I've put this together. And that's why I like to make a point when I have these exchanges. Let's put answers out there, and you put the answers clearly on us. We are responsible. In fact, I think there's even something in the Old Testament that does say, if I'm not mistaken, it's the book of Judges, that does make some statement regarding the fact that a corrupt people get the leadership they deserve. And you've put that down on us here, and it's been said that some of the some of the scenarios in the Old Testament, that bad leadership was a direct punishment for a populace that had lost their way. And
yes.
So point well taken.
Brian, you're going back to the proper perspective. All of this needs to change, because anybody who is well educated in our society has a responsibility. Each and every one of us that has an education no longer can claim ignorance of the facts. We can't claim ignorance. And because of that, once we know the facts, we know the truth, we have to act. And we have to help others act. And we have to be an example for others to act and to do the right thing.